Nancy Drew, Worst of Blackmoor Manor. A story by Arglefumph. Chapter 7, Talking to Linda. Nancy headed down the hallway and walked into Linda's room. Hey, Nancy said. Awesome detective here. Linda didn't say anything. I checked out that hidden passageway you mentioned, Nancy said. I didn't see a cursed plaque, though. All I saw was a parrot plaque. What? Linda asked. How can you call yourself a detective? It was right there, waiting to be found, wanting to be found. It needed someone to find it. Are we talking about the plaque or my friend George? I know she's been looking for a boyfriend for a while now, but that doesn't have anything to do with this case. I'm doomed. Doomed, Linda said. I knew that curse was from the witch, and here's proof. The plaque disappeared as soon as I left the passageway. Calm down, Nancy said. It was dark in the dragon passageway, and I didn't have a flashlight. Maybe I missed the curse? Dragon passageway? Yeah, you know, the passageway behind the burping dragon in the East Hall, Nancy said. Linda breathed a sigh of relief. I was talking about the hidden passageway behind the gargoyle. So there are multiple hidden passageways, Nancy deduced. Perfect. When am I going to solve a mystery in a place which is not an architect's playhouse? The witch built the passageways so she could escape in case soldiers attacked, Linda said. Don't you see? This house is designed to get rid of outsiders. Outsiders like you and me. How do I get inside this passageway? Nancy asked. You move the gargoyle around. I don't know the pattern. I was just fiddling with it, and I came across the solution by accident. I bet I can figure out how the puzzle works, Nancy said. Do you have a flashlight I can use in these hidden passageways? No, Linda said. I never leave my bed. Why would I need a flashlight? Yeah, about that, Nancy said. Why don't you leave your bed? I think you need to get some exercise. I have been cursed and I'm turning into a monster. I have to stay far away from other people. It's for their own good. And mine. You're really starting to worry your husband and mother, Nancy said. But don't worry, Linda. I'll find this plaque thingy and prove that there's no curse. Then you'll be free to leave your room again. I wish you luck, Linda said. Chapter 8. Nigel! It's about time Nigel showed up in this story. Nancy left Linda's room and examined the gargoyle in the corner. She could move it left and right by 90 degrees. After trying out a few patterns, Nancy decided there had to be a clue for the puzzle somewhere. Nancy decided to ask Lulu for more information when she made an amazing discovery. Whoa! Nancy said. There's a downstairs part to the manor. Nancy slid down the banister and examined the lower floor. It had 6 ornate pillars, a maze design on the floor, and a lot of portraits. One of them instantly caught Nancy's eye. Ha ha! Look at the guy with the funny hat, she said. Nancy then noticed a portrait of a man standing by the upstairs gargoyle. This was the only portrait without a coat of arms. Nancy figured this was some sort of clue, but she didn't know what it meant. She decided to ask someone for more information. There were 4 doors in the downstairs area, not including the front door to the manor. Nancy went through the one on the right, and she found herself in a library. A dark-skinned man sat at a desk, typing madly. Ah, are you from the agency? He asked. It's about time. Agency? What? Oh dear, you're not here to help me, the man said. He adjusted his glasses as he turned his focus from the computer to Nancy. How do you do? I'm Nigel Mukherjee? I'm Nancy Drew. I'm a detective who's here to investigate what's wrong with Linda. I'm a historian researching the Penvillen family history for a new book I'm writing. Mrs. Drake has graciously opened up the library for me. Not much has been written about the Penvillens until now. Oh, neat, Nancy said. I had some questions about the Penny Bennies. For starters, what's up with the weather forecaster person? I'm sorry, to whom are you referring? You know, the guy who always predicted when it would rain, Nancy said. My parents used to sing to me about him when I was younger. Ranulph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Ranulph the Red is the family's progenitor, Nigel said. It is rumored that he had a magic meteorite, which allowed him to win every battle he fought. The government granted him this land in recognition of his military accomplishments. And what about the witch lady? You must be referring to Eleanor Penvellyn, who was burned at the stake in 1650. Did she really leave the curse of Blackmoor Manor? Ha! No! Nigel said. Most historians agree that her death was ordered by Cromwell for political reasons. Nancy smiled. She knew Linda wasn't really cursed, so she didn't turn anyone into a werewolf. That is still unclear, Nigel said. After her husband disappeared, a large beast was seen prowling the moor at night, and she forbade anyone from hunting it. Some say it was her husband, whom she cursed for finding out too much about the Penvellyn family secret. Others say her husband was in France at the time. I doubt we'll ever know the truth. I have one last question, Nancy said, not wanting to waste Nigel's time. Who's the person in the Great Hall with the gargoyle? That would be Corbin Penvellyn, Eleanor's grandson. It is rumored that he returned to Blackmoor so he could secretly continue her experiments in the mystical arts. Why doesn't he have a coat of arms? He does. It's in France, Nigel said. I can get you a copy of it if you help me out. Nancy frowned. It sounded like she was going to be forced to do someone else's chores again. Sure, what do you want? I'm in dire need of a typist, Nigel said. I wrote out my memoirs by hand, and I need to have them entered into the computer so I can send it to the publishers. That doesn't sound so bad, Nancy said. Nigel pulled out a stack of 400 pieces of paper. Fantastic! You can start now! Chapter 9, The Creepy Ritual. Nigel's memoirs were the most boring thing Nancy had ever read. At least a third of it was dedicated to the weather, and the middle contained a 20-page digression about the texture of pudding. When Nancy finally finished with her job, she found a note from Nigel thanking her for her work. Attached to it was a photograph of Corbin's coat of arms, which had marks on the right and left. Those indicate the directions I have to turn the gargoyle, Nancy immediately realized. Nancy's body suddenly made it known to her that it was well past midnight. Yawning, she got up and opened the library doors. She stumbled upon an incredibly strange scene. The manor was darkened, with the only light source coming from a candle in Ethel's hand. Ethel was standing behind Jane, and the two of them were walking down the stairs. Nancy hid behind a pillar to watch. Jane and Ethel were wearing elaborate jewelry, and they slowly chanted, "No key without toil, no fire without oil." They stopped at the center of the room, and Jane said, "My actions ensure that my name will endure to the end." Jane's hands moved, and Nancy could see she was pouring some sort of liquid on the ground. "Penvellyn," Jane whispered. Ethel looked on, smiling. The two of them then returned to Jane's room, chatting happily as they did so. "That was the freakiest thing I've ever seen," Nancy said. She checked her phone to see that it was 3:15 a.m. When she walked forward, she saw that there was a drain in the middle of the floor she hadn't noticed before. Nancy sniffed. It smelled like the liquid Jane poured into the drain was oil. In the middle of the night, Ethel and Jane dress up and start chanting so they can pour oil down a drain, Nancy said. Forget solving the mystery of Linda being sick and grumpy. This is the real mystery at Blackmoor Manor. Nancy went upstairs to confront Jane and Ethel, but the two of them had disappeared. Confused and tired, Nancy went to her room and fell asleep. The next day, Jane's room was locked because she was in lessons, so Nancy couldn't get inside. She decided to investigate the gargoyle instead. She spun it according to the directions on Corbin's coat of arms, and a huge section of the wall retracted. "Whoa!" Nancy said. "Pretty complex technology for a guy who lived in the 1600s. She stepped into the newly opened area, which was a little dark. She used her phone to light up the area. Along the right wall was a peephole. Nancy peered inside, and it showed her Linda's room. Specifically, it gave her a view of Linda's desk. Kind of a pointless peephole, Nancy thought. That's when Linda's hairy hand came into view and picked up her bottle of skin moisturizer. Nancy gave a small scream. Linda was coarse and hairy, like a werewolf! Backing away from the peephole, Nancy saw that the only other part of the room was a plaque on the door to the left. The plaque said that something bad would happen to the curious wanderer who was not clever enough to solve the riddle. Linda didn't tell me about any riddle, Nancy said to herself. The riddle was simple enough. Nancy had to spell out Eleanor's name in runes using the tiles below the plaque. The problem was that Nancy didn't know anything about runes. She took a few pictures of the available tiles with her phone's camera, then she left the hidden room.